Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM Channel 141. This is the Inside segment. I'm Harold Fisher. Tonight, there is frustration growing around the DMV as some residents continue to wait for the big dig out. Is another government shutdown just around the corner? Social media is on trial in Los Angeles. And what's the deal with the racial wealth gap in DC? Also, will data centers and the sphere actually get the green light in Prince George's County? We're talking about all of these stories and more at the Reporters Roundtable with news, analysis, perspective, and opinions. My guests are Tracy Wilkins, NBC4 investigative reporter, Barry O'Connell, opinion columnist for the Maryland Wire, and Misha Green, managing editor for the Washington Informer. Thank you all so much for joining this conversation. This is a really, really busy time, and probably the most important question that I have for each of you right off the top is, did you get out there and shovel? Tracy?
I did not. I'm not going to lie. My husband did all of the work. Poor thing has he has little sores on his hands from the gloves that gave way. And I was like, oh my gosh, babe, let me get the Neosporin. He did all the work. And we're on a corner, so we had to take care of the sidewalk, the front and the back, and it was heavy and it was hard. And I did make cocoa on the first day.
Oh, good for you.
I did do that. Yes, I did my part.
Put a little protein powder in that so he could, look buffed after all of that lifting. Misha,
right, get back out the next day.
Right.
Harold, I, like Tracy, have been a supportive partner to my boyfriend as he has been out there putting in the work. I like to remind people, Monday is my busiest day with the Washington Informer. Publishing day is Wednesday, and the paper comes out Wednesday afternoon to hit stands Thursdays. So I've been a little busy, is what I've liked to say is my past. That said, I have promised that at 3, I would help with the ultimate dig out of my vehicle. So,
what about you, Barry? Were you out there?
Well, actually, I'm in South Carolina, and a neighbor asked me to check on her cat last night. And when I because it was cold, it was in the 40s. And, when I told her cat was okay because she's out of town, I wrote back and said, if it gets any colder, I'm going to have to skip the flip-flops. So I'm suffering in the cold too.
Oh, my goodness. Yes, 40 degrees. Boo-hoo. I was out there, and yes, I do feel considerably more buff than I did on Sunday. But there are communities in the DMV that are not feeling the dig out. Delano Lewis with the DC Department of Government Services was interviewed just about everybody yesterday, and he called it. It's not just the snow, Tracy. It's the cold, and the impact that it has had on systems and equipment and staffing in the DMV.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've seen a storm like this, right? And we've had so many of our municipalities that have kind of gotten out of the full-time snow removal business and having the folks on hand to do that. And so now there's a lot of dependence on contractors to come in and do this work. And this was such an unusual storm. And we heard it here in News 4 from our meteorologists who were saying we were not expecting this much sleet. The air is so cold, we should have gotten more snow, but we got more sleet than we did snow packed on top of that snow that we got. So that is very difficult to remove and mix it, and I've been through Snowmageddon and all the other storms, and, I'm a native of our region. I remember a big storm of 86, our big storm of 96, our big storm of 89. I mean, we've had some major snowstorms. But this is just all of that ice on top of it that makes it super difficult. In Prince George's County, they're saying that 100% of their primary and secondary roads have been plowed, and a little more than half of their residential communities. And that's where the issue is lying throughout the district, Montgomery County, Prince George's County. That's where we're seeing the issue. It's what's happening in these neighborhoods and the neighborhood streets that haven't been properly plowed as of yet. And who knows if we're going to get a second pass. And who knows if we're going to get 2 lanes on these streets that are supposed to have 2 lanes or not.
Yeah. Misha, the county executive for Prince George's County, Aisha Braveboy, had a press conference this afternoon where she was saying their Silver Shovel project for seniors is at capacity. They had more than 4,000 requests. That's one thing. Also, she admitted that this was considerably more challenging than they could have possibly anticipated. What are your thoughts about being prepared for something like this?
Well, I think that this was one of those situations where we have to look at the infrastructure that's already in place when you talk about preparation. County Executive Braveboy made sure she noted that the snowplows that are in existence right now are not equipped to get up those inches of ice. You talk about the people who have been out there digging, who say once you get over those 5 inches of ice, it's really easy to get the rest. But when you're dealing with that and talking about machines with people running them, and who also have to be careful, who also have to ensure not only that they're trying to clear the streets, but not damage the cars on either side of them. You think about it, particularly in some of these Prince George's and district neighborhoods with very narrow streets. And they started during a time when it was still heavily icing. There's a lot that I think our leaders attempted to do in order to prepare. But this snowstorm mixed with sleet and significant ice was really unpredictable. You heard a lot of the meteorologists saying it, as well as the leaders. Now, one thing I do want to uplift is that I'm seeing a lot of people in communities reaching out and trying to dig out their neighbors. I just heard a story about a community in Brandywine, Maryland, who helped one of their elderly neighbors dig out his vehicle and make sure that his sidewalk was clear. And you're hearing stories about that all over the DMV. I think in the district, more than 600 people signed up as snow heroes. And so it's great to hear that the community is stepping up, but with climate change and the other conversations happening, it might be time to update our snowplows.
Yeah, and that goes to the heart of this next question, Barry. Is it possible that local governments are overpromising and not really remembering or understanding, the power of nature, and then here we are? Or is it that you just can't make everybody happy?
Let's talk about optics a second. They did some videos where singing and dancing and carrying on looks like a heck of a party, and God bless them. I mean, people should have fun. I'm not putting people down for having fun, but when the county's looking for information on the roads, the county executive or her designated authority should have sat there grim-faced, very serious, and said, we're now at 42% of the streets in the county have been treated, and we anticipate having X percent more. Okay. But when you've got a bunch of people in a conference room, not in the county command center, but in a conference room at a very expensive hotel, singing and dancing and then jumping up and down in the snow and having a great time, it's sending a message like, hey, we're special. We're going to have a party. Sorry that you're stuck in the snow. They should have been a little bit more sensitive to the people. I was getting a lot of messages, and, I'm not a real reporter. I do OpScent, basically. I collect information. I put it together. I analyze it. I have a lot of sources. So I'm a little bit different than most people. But I'm getting people who are blowing up and saying they're in that hotel partying. Well, they should have been a little bit more direct, more serious, more focused, giving us the thing. Also, there's a perception that District 8, Edwards District, got first treatment. Okay, that they got taken care of first, that other districts, that the mid-county was ignored. There should have been reports coming out that told what the progress was, and that was not apparent to most people. If they put it out, it missed.
Well, Tracy, am I wrong by saying you just can't make all the people satisfied all of the time?
Well, I'm going to say, as a native Prince Georgian who is from Beltsville, we know.
Oh, then that says it all right there.
It's like to be last when you get your streets cleaned. From a reporter's perspective, I found that the Brave Boy administration was extraordinarily responsive. We had them on our air throughout the morning and the evening, as well as the rest of the council. If we needed information on what was happening with snow totals, we were getting that very quickly. I will also say that from the perspective of people who I have talked to in government about, what do you make of this unconventional snow command center that they had set up at the hotel in College Park? I haven't gotten feedback that they found that it was ineffective. I don't know what was happening after hours. I don't have folks who have said to me that there was a party going on or that any of these other things were happening. I don't know that, right? But what I do know is that there were folks who felt like this was a great way to have all of the officials in one place communicating. And from our perspective, communication has been good. But I would say this, that in terms of what's happening in the community and what's happening on the streets, when people cannot get out of their driveways, when there are residential neighborhoods where things are backed up, optics is important, right? And social media, people want to see, like I read the comments under the county executive's video that she posted of them, paying tribute to Stephanie Mills with Home, trying to tell people to stay home and singing about it, right? And the comments were mixed. There were people who were like, look, read the room. I can't get out my driveway. I don't want to see you singing. And then there were other people who were like, that's my county executive. I enjoy what you all are doing. So it was a mixed bag of reaction to what they were saying. And I think that reaction also depends on what it was looking like on your specific street.
Yeah, I do want to move on, but to that point, I will say, Prince George's County officials weren't the only ones doing video. The superintendent of the Montgomery County school system, he did a rap video about school safety and staying home and the children. I believe the Baltimore City mayor also did a video. What one could argue, you got to meet people where they are, and maybe even as you are dealing with serious issues, who knows, you can be.
Yeah, but I will say this about the superintendent's video for Montgomery County: he gets the MTV award. How fantastically produced was that video?
Yeah. Look,
that was great.
I think he's done it before. I'm going to be taking a break in a bit, but I did want to at least initially start this conversation, and I'll stick with Prince George's County in this particular regard. We've seen this sphere proposal. We're also seeing the whole data centers thing in Prince George's County. The jury is still out. No decisions certainly have been made. There have been, all kinds of, of meetings, updates on these issues. Misha, I'll start with you and Sphere. There was an opinion piece in the Washington Post today saying, yeah, a lot of people want it, but there are going to be all of these tax breaks, and there are other big projects that have gone by the wayside in Prince George's County. Quickly, your thoughts, and we'll pick it up on the other side.
Well, when the announcement was made, what I saw a lot of people saying is, it sounds cool, but do we really need it? Obviously, Prince George's County has had a lot of disappointing decisions in the past year when it comes to the FBI headquarters, the closure of Six Flags, what's happening with the Landover property and the data centers. And so if the Sphere is an opportunity truly to make money, to provide employment opportunities, then it sounds like a great idea. But I will say that we had it as our viewpoint question in the Washington Informer last week. A lot of folks had a lot of very mixed reviews on it, basically saying, I'm not opposed, but what else do we really need in Prince George's County? In the sphere, really that when folks have a lot of other concerns in the county.
Yeah. Hold that point. We'll talk about that on the other side. Don't forget, you can hear this and every edition of the Daily Drum Inside segment via podcast on WHUR.com. The original Quiet Storm with Raheem Devon is coming up next on WHUR-FM. This conversation continues on Sirius XM channel 141 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our conversation at the Reporters Roundtable. My guests are Tracy Wilkins, NBC4 investigative reporter, Barry O'Connell, opinion columnist for the Maryland Wire, and Misha Green, managing editor for the Washington Informer. Barry, again, I grew up in Prince George's County. Certainly it has changed considerably since back then, tablets were stone when I was a kid. But, the reality is that economic development seems to constantly be on the minds of Prince George's County leaders. There was a press conference just a couple of weeks ago with the governor talking about economic development, mixed use development in Capitol Heights. What are your thoughts about, first of all, Sphere?
I love the Sphere. I think it's a great idea. It came right out of, the governor's got something called, that my sources refer to as the table. Okay. He said he wanted a big idea. He wanted something special. And it was one of his chief aides who came up with a plan for the Sphere. I think it's a good idea, and I think it's well put together. Let me also say, as far as Prince George's County history goes, my family landed at Port Tobacco in 1659. And I am the direct descendant of a Union soldier and the daughter of a slave from Charles County. So we go back. Now, some of it's in Charles County, so don't sneer at me for that. But and I lived in Prince George's County. I love Prince George's County. I think it's a great place. I think we're going to get the data center. I don't think under the law we could legally stop the data center. I'm not in favor of it. Please don't think I'm a cheerleader for the data center, but I have a feeling that they're going to come along. It's going to go to court. It's going to be pushed through court. And I think they're going to build a data center. And I think it'll be a shame. I think it'll be a very negative thing. I think the former mall site is a bad place to put a data center, but I think they're going to build it there. Billions of dollars have a lot of power when it comes to getting lawyers and court decisions.
Yeah. Tracy, one of the things when you talk let's talk about the data centers for just a moment. I was in Raleigh, North Carolina late last summer. And, as a local news junkie, I was kind of watching local television. And in the suburbs of Raleigh, there was a consideration for a data center as well. And I was fascinated by the kind of pushback from the public that I heard. It was a surprise. That was not what I was expecting to see when I say I wasn't expecting to see a data center story. But this isn't a Prince George's County story. This is a national story, the biggest data center farm in Northern Virginia. So, this is something that the county is going to have to contend with, and it is not going to be an easy thing, no matter what they decide to do.
When you talk about Sphere, you talk about data centers, you talk about the loss of some major tax generators and drivers for folks visiting Prince George's County in the state of Maryland going away. All of this is about money. And all of this is about the diversification of the tax base in Prince George's County. This has been a long fight for Prince George's, especially in the new Prince George's, the Prince George's that transcended from a predominant white county to a mixed county to a predominant African American county. The things that are happening in Prince George's County, the whole country needs to be paying attention to, because when the folks who are at the top of the food chain are considered a national minority and have faced discrimination in pay and in access and opportunity, what does it look like? Even as one of the wealthiest predominant African American counties in the country, what does that look like when you're trying to develop a diverse economy? That's what Prince George's County has consistently been up against. And its fight has been to get over the hump and to have a county that truly thrives and is representative of the people who live there. That's what these conversations are about. Now, is a data center the way to go? You know, we all remember Landover Mall. My sister worked at the Limited forever. My godmother worked in one of the stores there as well, lived around the corner. People
Walden's
have been
book.
waiting.
Walden's book.
Who didn't work in Landover Mall? People have been waiting to see what the Lerner family was going to do with that property. And their dream was, the people who built their lives around this thriving mall, was that one day they would get what they saw the Lerners do in other parts of our region, right? That maybe they were going to get a Tyson's or something that reflected their sensibilities. And what they're hearing now is a data center. So yes, you are finding folks who are rising up, who are learning about the impacts of all of this, the environmental impacts, what it could mean for their water, what it could mean for their electricity, what it could mean for their bills, what it could mean in terms of jobs. And is this something that's going to benefit the community, or is it going to benefit whoever builds it? And then you're hearing about tax generation and what that could mean for Prince George's County. What we know now is that there is still a moratorium, at least until the spring. They're going to continue to investigate this. But the people who are opposed to this are seriously opposed to this. We have a county executive who has to run again. You know, and that's coming up. We're looking at the primary in June. We have a general election that's coming. You know, there are a lot of folks who are like, let's kick this down the, kick this can down the road until we have our seats cemented, right? So this is going to be a very interesting conversation. And what's happening here, I think, is fascinating. And I think it's something that Atlanta's going to be paying attention to, and Detroit's going to be paying attention to, and LA is going to be paying attention to, because Prince George's is the leader and shows so many other predominant minority communities what it's like to try and thrive. And people are learning from the example that Prince George's sets.
Yeah. And again, it's always nice. I mean, just to keep it really foundationally, everybody says, hey, why can't Prince George's have nice things? Okay. So when it comes to the Sphere, I've seen the Sphere in, Las Vegas. I saw it right before it was completed. And it's like, oh, that's a thing. But again, what about Northwest Stadium? Like you said, what about the Landover Mall site, Six Flags? It just seems that Prince George's County keeps taking these hits. And can I ask, the question, why is Prince George's County taking these hits? It feels like somebody is constantly beating up on the county. And you just, as a resident, as a long-time resident growing up there, you can only hope for the best, and certainly that is my editorial about that.
Well, it's still the economic driver for the state, and I think it's important to say this. They still have the most hotel stays in the state of Maryland, in Prince George's County, specifically at National Harbor. National Harbor has more tourism in it than Anne Arundel County, and what is significant about that is that Anne Arundel has BWI Airport. It's an international airport. So for years, that was the economic driver for hotel stays in the state of Maryland. Bigger than Ocean City, Annapolis, bigger than Baltimore was what was happening in Anne Arundel County, right? For Prince George's to now have that title, I mean, that is significant. There's a lot that's happening in that National Harbor corridor. And it makes sense that when Sphere was looking for this next place to go and did a national search, that it decided this is the place to go. So Prince George's has fantastic possibility. We just have to make sure. I mean, the citizens having questions and putting their finger on the scale when it comes to what government is doing is what has helped to make the county thrive in these specific areas, right? And so they should continue to do that.
Yeah. I want to move on to probably one of the biggest national stories right now. This is ever changing. What we could be facing yet another partial federal government shutdown, all of this over, ICE funding. The situation in Minnesota, Barry, has been, to be frank, shocking, very, very difficult to stomach. Just your thoughts about where things are there, because even today the reporting was that the two ICE agents who were involved in the allegedly involved in the shooting of Alex Preddy have been put on administrative leave some 4 days after that shooting occurred. Are we going to see a shutdown first and foremost over ICE? What do you think?
I don't think so, and I'm going to tell you why. Looking at the McNair article yesterday in Black Enterprise magazine, she lays out a very convincing argument that the NRA has turned on Trump. Suddenly, on their message boards and the Second Amendment message boards across the country and the social media and public statements, they're coming out and saying you can't shoot people because they're armed legally. Okay, that's one part. That's a big part of his base. Trump always plays to his base. Okay, his other part is the tech bros, the big billionaires who run tech companies are looking at this and going, we don't want this sort of instability in the market. We don't want this instability of a shutdown. We don't want this. And suddenly Trump, he sent Bovino back to California.
Yeah.
And looks like Kristi Noem may be, I mean, she's been taken out of direct chain of command for Minnesota. They put that guy in there, the more reasonable one, I forget his name.
Tom Homan.
Yeah, exactly. He was the one who said the shooting should be investigated. And everybody else was saying that they're terrorists. Okay. So Trump is realizing that he's losing his base. And Trump always chickens out. He can't afford to lose the NRA. He can't afford to lose the tech billionaires. Right now, you're going to see. I think he's sending the message to Congress to back off. We're going to work things out.
But there are some Republican senators who are, at least now, saying that they will not support the funding of ICE because of the killing of Renee Good and now Alex Preddy. And certainly this vote is supposed to come tomorrow night. Who knows whether or not that is going to happen? But we are once again kind of up against the wall. Misha, I am not the optics. It really play a big role in this, and to this point, based on Misha, what we initially heard after the shooting of Alex Preddy, and what the video is now showing, I think that will be influential in what happens tomorrow.
Certainly. I mean, the rhetoric that we heard surrounding Alex Preddy's murder initially from the Trump administration, from Kristi Noem, completely, it was in complete opposition, if you will, to the video that the world saw and is still in horror from. And so certainly I think it will play a large role in tomorrow's vote. I mean, I was just reflecting, thinking of Minneapolis in particular, on the Derek Chauvin decision. And, of course, we had not seen a decision like that where all three charges, an officer was found guilty, second degree manslaughter, these, really big charges. And so I think part of that, in 10 hours, I think the jury came to a verdict was because of that video, because of the 8-minute and 43 seconds or 34-second video that left the world in horror. And so in this same way, you're seeing politicians who, particularly from the GOP, who you'd not necessarily expect to speak up, who are now saying that they will not support the DHS part of the funding bill. But I just, having been horrified at some of the past shutdowns, and particularly watching with bated breath during the historic one of last fall. I'm just waiting and seeing. I've seen a lot of great arguments to support both sides that the shutdown could be averted, but also, I mean, the clock is ticking, and when you, as you said, when you're up against the wall and the clock, we're talking about people's lives, and so I hope that the decision is urgent, is made with the level of urgency when you think about people's lives, the amount of agencies that will be affected, and thus the people who will then be affected because of those agencies. But I'm not holding my breath one way or the other, Harold, to be quite honest.
Yeah, and Tracy, that's the thing that I wanted to ask you too, because look, we've already had the longest federal government shutdown in history late last year. A shutdown again certainly would be devastating, for the DMV, and we saw how people were really hurting after that 44 days or so. This is not something that I think working people, those who are left in our area working for the federal government, want to have to deal with.
Yeah, shutdowns in the Washington region are always very difficult and problematic. But I think that the deeper question here is, what is it that the Democratic Party is trying to achieve? Is this political theater? Because the shutdown that would have made a difference and would have impacted what's happening with ICE has already passed us. The big, beautiful bill is what increased the funding for ICE and therefore increased the number of people who are working for ICE and changed the pay structure and the training structure and so many other things, right? And now we have Congress taking a look at adding in some of the things that they're realizing they really need to get in there with all of this increase for ICE, body-worn cameras, de-escalation training. These are the things that are going to be paid for. And so when you say we don't want to fund ICE, we want to separate ICE and have a separate bill to deal with them outside of these other bills, we want a different consideration for what's going to happen with this. The people in the streets are calling for defunding ICE. The people in the streets are saying, get rid of ICE. The people in the streets are saying this is a federal agency that is corrupt and is not being properly overseen. And we are afraid of what it's doing. And its mission is a corrupt mission. This is what people in the streets are saying. So I think that this is really a question of Democratic messaging. And are they once again kind of missing the point? And so if it is political theater, and if it is, look, we have a problem with ICE, we're going to separate this and we're going to, figure this thing out, impacting federal workers, a huge part of their base, at least here in the DMV, will be impacted as well. And are they once again kind of missing the point? The damage has been done. So are we going to get these guys the training that they need? Are we going to require them to wear those body-worn cameras? Are we going to be looking at systems where this agency is properly overseen and where the officers are held to account? It is crazy to me that after Freddy's shooting, the officers involved were not immediately placed on administrative leave. For their sake, for the public's sake, for their co-workers' sake, for the sake of all of the officers in the street. I mean, all of this is like being in the upside down. So if you're going to take a look at ICE, then let's talk about those things, not just its funding.
There's a change going on. There's a big change that, and forgive me if this sounds a little bit unpleasant, but when ICE was only roughing up and hurting or even shooting Hispanics and Black people, white MAGA America can get along with that. I mean, that sounds reasonable. You say Black person, they say criminal. You say Hispanic, they say illegal. I mean, it's an ugly form of racism. Then they shot a pretty white girl in the face, or a white woman in the face. I don't mean to demean her in any way. Okay, they shot a white woman in the face. That really started rattling people. Then they killed a white gun owner legally carrying. You see, that changes this whole thing. And now suddenly Republican congressmen and senators are looking at this and they're not feeling as comfortable, because when it's only those people then they can get away with ugly racism. But when it starts being the us to them, then it changes everything. And, they started killing white people, and that changes the conversation. And suddenly Trump is swinging away from them, and we have a chance to push for meaningful change. And the threat of a shutdown is a great idea. And let's roll back some of the excesses as much as we can.
Yeah, one of the other points that I wanted to move on to, and this is a really important issue, the social media trial that TikTok has settled ahead of the social media trial in Los Angeles. But we're talking about more than 1,600 plaintiffs accusing the Instagram owners, YouTube, Snap, of designing addictive products. And when you talk about addiction, and we can go back to the cigarette controversies of when we were much younger, that 60-minute expose that and I'm telling my age now, but that's, and let me say this, as a former smoker, okay, I understand addiction, but as they say, Tracy, this is on a whole nother level when you're talking about the impact that social media is having on children. And certainly we did not have this kind of thing when we were kids. So I don't know what impact something like this would have had on me if I were 10, 11, 12, 13, a teenager.
It speaks to the cruelty of capitalism, right? What's happened here, because even at the children's expense, and there's no question about what these systems were doing and what these media corporations were doing. It has been tested and retested, and it is clear that they had absolute knowledge. We'll see what the court decides. And I have a pretty good guess of what a jury in California is going to decide with this. But at the end of the day, this was a bigger monster than any parent can handle, definitely than any child can handle, and quite frankly, than these corporations could handle, right? But they knew how to restrain it. And if they were interested in restraint, they would have practiced that. So what this is really about is, what do we think about our children and their futures and their brains and their addiction to this information? It is a cruel form of revenue generation when you do it on the backs of children. And we're supposed to be better than that. And these other countries outside of the US aren't allowing kids to just do whatever they want to on these social media platforms. There are restrictions that are put in place for their safety. And in some instances, not just for the children, but also for the adults as well. Mm-hmm. And it's only in the United States where people can be run amok. And I don't think that this is the kind of free market that we've been talking about. And it is specifically dangerous for a very specific type of children. So it's an opportunity for us to take a look at who are we as a people and what kind of demands are we going to make of these corporations that make money on the backs of our children and our homes.
Mm-hmm. Misha, you're nodding your head.
Well, Harold, I wanted to say preach, preacher, to everything that Tracy said. But, particularly what scares me from what we found with this social media trend is the increase in mental health challenges that young people are experiencing. I think there's been a 35% increase in adolescents ages 12 to 17 being diagnosed with some form of mental health challenges since 2016. And so if you look at that, with the rise of TikTok, with the rise of all of the meta platforms, with YouTube Shorts, you see that in the past 10 years, that has totally been or rather, you can't separate these numbers with the how popular social media is. And so it's heartbreaking. I've covered several programs working to combat mental health challenges, and we know that addiction is one of the biggest mental health diagnoses is up there, right? And so if we're talking about social media being addictive, which I think I can speak for myself, I'll look up and I'm scrolling and it's been 30 minutes and I'm like, how did this happen? So much so that I've had to put a block on it. If I don't have to go on social media, which is hard because you know what we do for work, sometimes that's the place to see what's going on. But I don't go on it during the day because of the risks that the rabbit hole that we speak of is. And so imagine these children whose brains are still forming and able to be manipulated in so many ways and influenced by the videos and the posts. I'm very concerned. And so like Tracy said, I only know, I can only imagine what a California jury will do, but I do know that there needs to be a lot of restrictions and reins put on these social media platforms. The children need it. We need to save our children. They are suffering, and particularly young Black children. We cover it all the time.
Yeah, Barry, I only have 30 seconds. Your thoughts about this?
I don't have a young audience. My audience is mostly 21 and up. I peak at about 55. But one of the things I see is I get a spike in my traffic at 4 o'clock in the morning. I schedule articles for 3:45 because I found out people are up and reading social media. I assume it's old guys. They get up for whatever reason, and before they go back to sleep, they check the internet. But people are getting up and commenting and reading and or sending me text at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning. So it's not just the kids. Everybody seems to be addicted.
Yeah, good point. If we haven't needed her before, we really need Erica Badu now. Make you put your phone down.
Yeah.
we got to find a way to make you put your phone all the way down. Look, we didn't even get a chance to get to the racial wealth gap in DC. We are going to try to effort a show on the Daily Drum at some point in the future, because I think that's also a really important story.
Sure is.
Barry O'Connell, Misha Green, Tracy Wilkins, it is so good to see all of you. I really appreciate your time. Be safe and be careful in the snow.
Thank you. Same to you, Harold.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. That is the Daily Drum for this Wednesday, January 28th, 2026. I'm Harold Fisher. Good night.